It's common for a woodworker to cross-cut several parts to the same length, and while you can measure, mark, and cut each one individually, it's faster and more accurate to use a stop block, and there are a couple of ways to do it. The first way is the most common. You line up your first cut, then clamp a scrap against the end of the workpiece. Of course, you're limited by the length of your miter gauge fence. Another option is to clamp the block to your rip fence and butt each workpiece up against it. In this case, you wouldn't want to use a piece of standard 3/4 inch thick material for your stop block. Why not? Because that would require your table saw fence to be too close to the end of your workpiece. As you complete the cut, the offcut will rotate slightly. You need room between the offcut and the table saw fence so the workpiece doesn't become trapped in there and shoot back at you. That's the whole reason for using a stop block as a reference instead of the table saw fence itself. And it's why 3/4 of an inch isn't enough. In fact, I made one that's exactly 4 inches wide. I can clamp it to my fence and use the fence's scale to set my measurement, since it's easy to add 4 inches to the length of any offcut. By positioning it close to me, I make sure the end of the workpiece clears the stop block and stays far enough away from the fence to avoid any problems at the end of the cut. I can't stress enough that you should never use your miter gauge to make a cut that goes all the way through a workpiece while the end of the board is against your saw's fence. If you do use a stop block, whether it's on the miter gauge or the table saw fence, watch out for dust buildup that can prevent your next workpiece from fully seating against it. Either blow it away between cuts or cut a chamfer on the block so the dust has somewhere to go. And one final tip. You can add a screw to a stop block to create a micro adjuster to fine-tune any cut. If you've never heard of a master gauge, I'm not surprised. Paul Riley and his family don't use a lot of flashy marketing gimmicks. They just let their tools speak for themselves. You'd expect that from a guy who spent nearly half a century developing precision tools to set up and fine-tune machinery of all types. Now he shares his most clever ideas with his fellow woodworkers. Check them out at mastergauge.com. Wait, don't go yet. If you're new here, please subscribe and remember to ring the bell. I would really appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up, or better yet, leave us a comment. I always read them. And be sure to check out the latest issue of Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal. It's always packed with tips, tricks, and tutorials designed to make you a better woodworker.